Okay, welcome back. So last video we found the line of regression between the number of field goals LeBron James made and the number of points he scored for that season. So in this video we're going to create a residual plot and we're going to determine how well this linear model fits these two variables. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to continue on our table and we're going to find y hat. Now I'm sure all of you remember y hat is our predicted variable. So what we're saying here is if LeBron James scores 622 field goals, how many points are we expecting him to score? We know he already scored this many, but how many would we expect? Well, we would plug it into our regression model. So that's going to be, I'm going to come over to y hat, I'm going to say this cell equals this cell times, and you see the times here is an asterisk, times the slope, which is, if we look down here, the slope is 3.283, so 3.283, and then minus 344 because that is our y-intercept, 344.51. So all I'm doing is plugging in this x value into our equation and getting my prediction. So thankfully we're in Excel, and if you drag your cursor to where it turns black right here, if I drag this down, it will do the same formula for each of these cells. So if I click on this one, this time I'm using cell A25, which is right here, times the slope minus the y-intercept, and it gives me the predicted value. So now I have all of my predicted values and I have my actual values, which means I can find the residual. So the residual is going to be this cell equals y minus y hat. So if you look up here, I put a y for us. Y minus y hat, enter. So now I found the residual, which means my prediction was 43.5 points higher than his actual number. So his residual was negative 43. So I can, again, drag and it will do the same formula for each of these cells. So if you click here, this cell is doing B25, which is B25 right here, minus C25, which is right here. So I've now found all of the residuals. So what I'm going to do is make the residual plot. So over here, I want you to copy your x variable, which was field goals made. So come over here and copy, Command C, and paste. Now when you're copying your residuals, because now our residuals are going to be our y variable, if I copy this, it's going to copy the formulas. So see up here, if I'm clicking on this cell, it's doing B24 minus C24. So as I copy this, Command C, I'm going to click up here, but I'm going to do a special type of paste. I'm only going to paste the values. I'm not going to paste the formulas. So there we go. It copies the formulas. And now I can create my residual plot. So just like we made this scatter plot before, I'm going to highlight my x and y variable, go up to Charts, create a scatter plot, and it creates the residual plot for me. Now again, we can go in and we can mess with the chart and zoom in a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. Oops, didn't want to do that. And I'm going to zoom in on the axis. So if I go up to chart layout, go again to our axis, horizontal, our options. I'm going to go from maybe 550 again to 1000. So our minimum is 550. Okay, now I can look and determine if there is any pattern in my residual plot, and we'll talk about more of that. We'll talk more about that in class. The last thing we haven't talked about in class yet is if I want to find the average distance from the line, how far away are these points from my line on average? Well, we can look at the residuals because that's the measure of that distance, and if I find the standard deviation, well, remember standard deviation is a measure of spread, and it tells us the average distance from the mean. So if I find the standard deviation of my residuals, that tells me the average distance from the line. So down here where it says STDEV, standard deviation of the residuals, I just want to come down, and we've used standard deviation before, I'm going to say this cell equals STDEV, and I'm going to use the standard deviation formula in Excel, and I'm going to highlight my residuals. And this will tell us the standard deviation of my residuals. So that tells me the average distance from the line.